What would you do if one night, while watching the stars, you saw a man fall from the sky, silent, glowing faintly like embers in ash, and carrying the smell of rain before a storm? The fields of Middle-earth have seen many strange things, but never one quite like you. You are Gandalf the Grey, though not yet by that name, and you awaken on the western shores of the world, drenched in salt, clutching nothing but the echo of a command. Go east. The waves hush behind you, the gulls call above, and before you stretches a land that hums faintly with the song of creation itself. The air tastes of pine and mystery. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember your journey from the west, only that once, long ago, you were Olorin, one of the Maiar, wisps of divine thought in the service of the Valar. In the undying lands, you dwelt unseen, whispering wisdom into the dreams of the kind-hearted. Some say you often walked unseen among the elves of Valinor, learning pity from Nienna, the Lady of Tears, and humility from the sight of stars reflected in mortal eyes. Others argue that you feared the fire of Melkor's rebellion so much that when the call came to go east, you hesitated. Yet here you are, sent by the Valar to guide, not to rule. You wear the body of an old man because power here must wear humility like a cloak. And so, with trembling fingers, you pick up a gnarled staff of driftwood and begin your long walk inland. The first village you reach does not know your name. They call you Stormcrow, for the thunder that follows wherever you go. You heal a fevered child, light a hearth that will not burn, and speak softly of patience and courage. The people fear you a little, but they also leave you bread on their doorsteps. That night, as you rest beneath the whispering leaves, you remember the white shores of Aman and the sound of laughter that once seemed immortal. There's a sadness in your chest you can't quite name, a longing that even immortality cannot soothe. It's said that when the Astari came, Círdan the shipwright gave you his ring, Narya, the ring of fire. Few recall that this small act of trust would later ignite hope itself across the Third Age. The ring's warmth flickers beneath your robes even now, like a secret sunrise. You travel through Lindon, where the High Elves watch you with serene curiosity. Another servant of the West, one murmurs, as though you are a storm they've already foreseen. Elrond greets you with quiet respect, Galadriel with the glint of recognition. In their presence you feel both ancient and newly born, as though your past and future are caught in the same breath. The elves know the signs. They sense the darkness stirring in the far south, where whispers of a necromancer begin to spread. Some claim it's a petty spirit, a shadow barely worth their time. But you, who have looked into the abyss of Melkor's fire, recognize the scent of old evil. Still, you laugh it off at the council table, cracking a small jest about ghosts who need better hobbies. The elves smile thinly. They prefer their doom without humor. One evening, as you camp beside the river Anduin, a group of travelers gathers by your fire. You tell them tales of the stars, how Varda herself placed them in defiance of darkness, and how each carries a name known only to the Valor. You describe the music of the Ainur, that first great symphony of creation, and for a moment, even the insects fall silent, listening. A child asks if you were there when the world began, and you laugh, a soft, smoky laugh. I was there, you say, but I was too busy being amazed to take notes. The laughter eases their fear, and as they sleep, you sit awake, watching embers turn to ash. Perhaps this is your true purpose, not to lead armies or challenge monsters, but to keep alive the fragile warmth of wonder. Yet something tugs at your mind, a shadow in the east, like a whisper of black wings over the moon. You dream of a tower wreathed in stormlight, of a voice calling from beneath the earth. When you wake, the stars have shifted slightly, as if urging you onward. Some say you were always meant to walk this path, that destiny was woven into your steps by the Valar themselves. Others insist you could have refused, that free will burns even brighter than fate. You don't argue either way. You simply lift your staff, brush the frost from your cloak, and start walking again. The night smells of wet stone and old promises. The wind carries your name, Gandalf, the Grey Pilgrim. You smile at the irony. After all, you were never meant to shine too brightly. The light you carry is meant for others. Long before the lands of Middle-earth ever knew your name, you were Olorin, a spirit of wisdom dwelling unseen in the gardens of Lorien, where dreams are woven like silk and sorrow itself becomes music. You remember it now, not as a clear vision, but as the sensation of light upon still water, the hush of eternal dawn. In those days you walked among the Maiar, learning from Irmo the secrets of rest and healing, and from Nienna the art of compassion. She taught you to weep without shame, to feel the pain of others as if it were your own. Some say that was why the Valar chose you above others to go into the mortal lands. That empathy would be your greatest weapon, not fire or sword. Others whisper that you were reluctant, that when Manwë called for emissaries, you trembled at the thought of darkness, fearing the memory of Melkor's rebellion might return to claim you once more. Yet compassion and fear are cousins, and it is said that courage is born only when both walk side by side. When you arrived among the Istari, 5 wizards cloaked in the frail bodies of men, you were not the most powerful, nor the most ambitious. Saruman the White strutted with pride, certain his intellect alone could master the forces of shadow. Radagast loved beasts more than men, and wandered into the forests, lost in birdsong. The 2 blue wizards vanished eastward, into legend or madness, no one knows which. You, Gandalf, were the least among them, or so it seemed. You carried no grand staff carved from ivory, no followers, no fortress of learning, only a pipe, a small pouch of long-bottom leaf, and a patience that could outlast centuries. When others sought control, you sought understanding. When they built towers, you built fires. You wandered long through Eriador, your footsteps light upon the moss and stone. Every inn, every village hearth, every campfire where you paused became a small circle of warmth in a growing age of fear. The songs you heard, the old elvish laments of Valinor, the bawdy hobbit rhymes about missing ale barrels, were all, in their own ways, prayers against oblivion. You listened, and sometimes you joined in. They laughed at your stories about stubborn dwarves and sleeping trolls. They didn't know you'd seen those things, that your laughter was the kind that hides 1,000 memories. There was one night, long ago, when you stood on the cliffs of Linden and watched the sea breathe under starlight. A single gull cried overhead, and for a heartbeat, you felt the pull of home. The undying lands lay just beyond the curve of the world, so close, so unreachable. You could have turned back, you think sometimes. You could have begged forgiveness and sailed west, but you didn't. You chose to stay, and though no one else saw it, the stars seemed to shimmer with quiet approval, as if the valor themselves exhaled in relief. You'd passed your first great test, not of might, but of faith. Among the elves, you found knowledge that even the West had forgotten. Did you know that some of the Noldor believe starlight holds memory? That every beam from Varda's constellations carries fragments of ancient thought? That is why elven poets write by moonlight, and why you often pause mid-journey to gaze upward. You do not read the stars for fortune, as men do. You read them for remembrance. In the soft glow, you sometimes hear faint echoes of Valinor's choirs, and you realize the music of creation never truly ended, it only changed key. But there are whispers now among the Maiar who linger unseen in the east. Whispers that Sauron, once the servant of Morgoth, is rising again, reshaping darkness into order, cruelty into logic. You felt it too, in the way fire no longer comforts you as it once did. Some say Gandalf foresaw this, that he alone among the Astari understood the patience of evil. Others believe fate simply turned its wheel and you happened to be standing where the shadow fell. Either way, your dreams grow restless. You wake with the taste of ash in your mouth and the sound of drums beneath the earth. And yet, despite it all, you still find joy in the small things. The smell of pipe smoke after rain, the clinking laughter of dwarves in a tavern, the sight of a single hobbit staring up at the stars with wonder. You once joked to Elrond that if all wisdom fails, you'll open an inn called the Wandering Wizard and spend your days pretending the world isn't breaking. He didn't laugh, but you did. Because laughter, you know, is also a form of magic. It keeps despair at bay. It lights the dark corners of the soul, even when the stars themselves grow dim. So you wander still, Olorin, now Gandalf, the Grey Pilgrim, a servant of fire and mercy, a messenger of hope who hides his tears behind smoke rings. Somewhere in the east, a darkness stirs. And though you know it will one day cost you everything, you tighten your cloak, lean on your staff, and whisper into the night, "Not yet." It begins, as most great things in Middle-earth do, with something small, round, and entirely unremarkable, a hobbit hole. You first find the Shire not by design but by accident, following the smell of pipeweed and the faint sound of laughter drifting over green hills. The land rolls like a quilt stitched in shades of gold and emerald, dotted with burrows, sheep, and the occasional late supper picnic. The sky glows with that soft, honeyed light of late afternoon, and for the first time in many long years, you feel at peace. It is here, among these carefree folk with muddy feet and bellies full of second breakfasts, that you begin to remember why you came. Not to wage war, but to preserve wonder. You wander into Hobbiton beneath the party tree and watch as they hang lanterns for some cousin's birthday. No guards, no walls, no suspicion. Just the quiet, defiant joy of a people who still believe the world is mostly kind. You smile, and one child waves at you with both hands, certain you must be some kind of tall, confused gardener. That evening, you light your first real fire in the Shire. A modest flame, coaxed gently from damp wood, and a whispered elvish charm. Around it, hobbits gather, curious as sparrows. You tell them tales, not of great wars or dark lords, but of the time a dragon mistook a thunderstorm for applause, or when an elf once sang so beautifully that even his enemies forgot to attack. They laugh, wide-eyed and content. You pass around your pipe, and when one hobbit coughs too hard, you joke that good smoke should make your eyes water, but not your soul. The laughter that follows lingers like music, and you realize something profound. These people have no idea they are the heart of the world. In the years that follow, your visits become a quiet ritual. The hobbits come to expect your fireworks, sparks shaped like stars, dragons, and one regrettable incident involving a flaming chicken. The Shire becomes your refuge, and the hobbits your secret hope. You tell yourself that protecting them is your duty, but deep down, you know it's more personal than that. Their innocence reminds you of what Middle-earth could still be, a place where joy is not yet outlawed. You even take to calling some of them dear fools, though with the affection of an old uncle, not the scorn of a wizard. You find it oddly comforting that they never take you too seriously. Power means nothing to them. They measure greatness in good harvests and well-cooked mushrooms. One autumn night, under a fat harvest moon, Bilbo Baggins, a particularly eccentric hobbit with a suspiciously tidy front garden, invites you to tea. He greets you nervously, wiping his hands on his waistcoat, and insists you try his seed cakes before they dry. You agree, amused, and as he chatters about maps and tales from Tookish ancestors, you feel a faint spark, something that smells faintly of adventure, of destiny. Perhaps this, you think, is what Nienna meant when she spoke of hope in small vessels. Bilbo, in his unassuming way, will become the hinge upon which the age turns. You do not know it yet, but when you leave his door that night, you will set in motion a chain of events that will one day shake the world. Still, shadows lengthen beyond the borders of the Shire. Rangers speak of orcs returning to the misty mountains. The greenwood darkens and begins to whisper a new name. Mirkwood. Dol Guldur breathes again. You hear these things and feel the old fire stirring in your chest. But here, amid the laughter and lanterns, you hesitate. The Shire is light, and you fear what will happen when that light meets the coming dark. There's a saying among the dwarves: even gold forgets the sun when buried too long. You wonder if innocence can be preserved, or if, like all precious things, it must one day be tested by fire. Scholars still debate your choice. Some claim Gandalf foresaw everything, that you deliberately nurtured the hobbits, knowing one day they would bear the ring and its burden. Others argue it was mere coincidence, a happy accident of fate and appetite. You never say. You simply keep visiting, lighting your pipe and pretending you don't notice the storm gathering beyond the horizon. When asked why you care so much for simple folk, you only smile and answer, because they remind me what I'm fighting for. And so, year after year, you come back to the Shire, not as a lord or savior, but as a friend with good stories and better fireworks. You walk their lanes at dusk, the fireflies blinking like tiny lanterns of hope. The world may burn someday, you think, but not tonight. Tonight, there is music under the hill, the smell of fresh bread, and laughter spilling through open windows. For now, that is enough. You gather the council of the wise for the first time, the White Council, as men will one day call it. Saruman presides, his robes gleaming like frost, his words polished and perfect as ever. Galadriel listens with the stillness of moonlight, her thoughts running deeper than the roots of trees. Radagast arrives late, smelling faintly of moss and owl feathers, muttering about squirrels with important news. It would almost be funny, if not for the heaviness in the air. You speak plainly of your fears, that the necromancer's fortress is not what it seems, that the dark power sleeping there is no mere spirit. Saruman smiles thinly and calls you overly suspicious. He insists there's no evidence, that the enemy was destroyed long ago. You notice how he avoids your gaze, how his hand lingers too long on his staff, as though gripping the idea of control itself. Still, the council votes for caution. Watch, but do not act. It is the curse of the wise to hesitate. You accept the decision, but leave restless. That night, Galadriel finds you pacing the balcony, your cloak rippling in the night wind. She tells you what you already know, that Saruman's pride will one day break him, and that only humility can face true darkness. You are the only one among us who loves the small things, she says softly. That may be your greatest strength and your greatest sorrow. You do not answer, but you look east, and in the glow of distant lightning, you swear you can hear the faintest laughter, cold and mocking. You travel south, seeking knowledge where others dare not tread. In Gondor, you scour the archives of Minas Tirith, reading scrolls so old the ink flakes away like burnt leaves. You find one that chills your blood, a record of the rings of power, their forging, and the single ring that bound them all. It speaks of the Dark Lord's spirit, unkillable so long as the ring endures. You close the scroll slowly, realizing that perhaps you have not come to Middle-earth to teach, but to endure. The shadow will rise again, and when it does, you must be ready. In Rohan, you drink with horse lords who sing of forgotten battles, and in the Iron Hills, You share pipeweed with dwarves who boast of hammering their fear into steel. They think you seek adventure, but in truth, you seek assurance that courage still exists, that hope hasn't fled entirely from the hearts of men and dwarves. One night, as you sit by a campfire in the Gap of Rohan, a young soldier asks if wizards ever feel fear. You look into the flames for a long time before answering. Only when we forget what it means to be mortal, you say. He doesn't understand, but he nods anyway, and the moment passes like smoke. Meanwhile, the shadow in Mirkwood deepens. The trees whisper lies, the animals flee north, and travelers vanish on the road. You go yourself, slipping through the gloom, guided by instinct and the faint glow of Narya beneath your sleeve. The fortress is there, Dal Guldur, black and silent, its towers wrapped in mist. You feel the cold before you see it, a chill that seems to freeze thought itself. The presence inside is ancient, cunning, and aware of you. When you speak a word of power, the walls seem to breathe. Then a voice, not heard but felt, murmurs your name, dragging it through the dark like a blade across stone. You retreat, shaken. You do not tell the others everything you saw. Some truths are too heavy to share until the time is right. Historians later argue about that night. Some claim Gandalf already knew then that the necromancer was Sauron reborn, that he simply bided his time, waiting for the right moment. Others think you doubted yourself, fearing to move against a shadow that might destroy you. Perhaps both are true. After all, even the wisest cannot see all ends. You only know this: the game has begun, and you are already one move behind. When you return to Rivendell, the stars are sharp and cold, the river sighing against the stones. Elrond greets you with wine and silence. "Did you find what you sought?" he asks. You nod slowly. "Not yet," you reply, "but I found what I feared." You do not stay long. Your road leads north again, toward a land of laughter and lanterns, the Shire, where the world is still blissfully unaware that doom has already begun to stir. You walk through the night, your staff tapping against the path like a metronome counting down the ages, and for the first time, you allow yourself a bitter chuckle. "The wise," you mutter. "If we're so wise, why does the dark—"
The road to wisdom, you've learned, is paved not with answers, but with restraint. It is one thing to know the shape of power. It is another entirely to resist touching it. You stand once more in Bag End, the gentle hum of hobbit chatter swirling around you like a lullaby, when Bilbo Baggins opens his trembling hand to show you the small, unremarkable ring he found in the dark of the misty mountains. You sense it immediately. Something coiled within that golden circle, quiet yet alive. The air thickens, the shadows bend, and even the candlelight seems to hesitate. You've known this presence before, long ago in the forging fires of Eregion and the wars that followed. It's him. Sauron's breath lingers in the metal like a curse. "A trinket, is it?" you murmur softly, and when Bilbo laughs, you feel your heart ache. You know this discovery will one day split the world in two, but not yet. Not tonight. You take the ring only briefly, just long enough to feel its weight, its cold defiance. It hums in your palm, whispering of dominion, of wisdom perfected, of peace without end. The words slip into your mind like honey in glass. If you only wore me, Gandalf, you could heal the world. The temptation is terrible in its gentleness. It doesn't promise glory. It promises relief. For a moment you imagine it. The free peoples united under your protection. The darkness banished forever. Every tear in Middle-earth wiped clean. Then, as swiftly as a lightning strike, you feel the truth. Its peace would be a prison. Do not tempt me, you whisper to the empty air, voice shaking. You drop the ring as if burned, your breath ragged. Power, you realize, is never evil in its nature. It's the longing behind it that corrupts. You hand it back to Bilbo, forcing a smile that hides your fear. In Rivendell, you seek counsel with Elrond and Galadriel. They too sense it. The ring's call is growing stronger. Elrond recalls the last alliance, the smoke over Mordor, and the blade that severed the ring from its master. We should have destroyed it, he says bitterly. We should have ended it then. But you both know that power born of will cannot be unmade by will alone. The debate rages through the long night, some arguing for secrecy, others for destruction. And then Galadriel says softly, "Perhaps it was meant to be found, by one who would not be tempted." She glances at you and you almost laugh. "Then may that person never be me," you reply. Some scholars claim Gandalf's refusal of the ring was his greatest victory, greater even than his battle with the Balrog or his return as the White. Others argue that it was cowardice, that the world might have been saved sooner had you been strong enough to wield it. But those who have truly understood your nature know the truth. You were never sent to rule. You were sent to remind. Power, to you, is a storm, beautiful, dangerous, and always moving. The wizard's task is not to command the wind, but to teach others how to light their fires against it. Still, you are not immune to fear. In the quiet hours of dawn, you catch yourself wondering if all your caution has only delayed the inevitable. You dream of Saruman's tower, white and unyielding, and of the ring resting in his hand instead of yours. The thought turns your stomach. He would wear it not for greed but for perfection, and that, you know, is far more dangerous. Pride disguised as order can devour the world as surely as chaos. There's an old elvish belief that says light, when trapped, becomes shadow. You see that truth in Saruman's eyes each time you meet. When next you return to the Shire, you find Bilbo older, his hand lingering a little too long on the ring, his eyes flickering with something. Not malice, but possessiveness. The ring has begun to whisper even to him. You sit by the fire and tell him stories of dragons again, though this time your laughter feels thinner. He thanks you, offers you tea, and when you leave, he insists he's quite fine. You walk home through the drizzle, heart heavy, knowing that the ring is waiting for someone else. You keep it secret from all but the wise, though even that circle begins to fray. Saruman dismisses your concerns, hiding his envy behind politeness. Radagast grows distant. Galadriel watches the east with unreadable eyes. You sense that the age of councils is ending, and the age of choices is beginning. Fate, you suspect, is not a straight line. It's a web, and every hesitation tugs the thread tighter. And yet, even in your dread, you find humor. When a hobbit once asks why you never married, you grin and say, "Because the only thing more dangerous than Sauron is commitment." They laugh, and so do you, though only half in jest. It is in laughter that you keep your balance. It's how you remind yourself that life, no matter how dark the sky, still deserves to be smiled at. As you ride away, The morning sun spills over the hills like spilled gold, and you realize something profound. The ring's greatest weapon isn't domination, it's despair. It convinces hearts that the fight is already lost. But you, Gandalf the Grey, have seen enough dawns to know better. The day always returns. The mountains rise before you like the bones of the world, jagged and ancient, their peaks veiled in storm cloud and sorrow. The Fellowship trudges beside you, weary and frightened. And though you smile to keep them moving, your heart feels heavier with every step. The mines of Moria loom ahead, dark, vast, and silent. Once, they were the pride of the dwarves, halls of song and silver. Now, they are tombs. You hesitate at the gates, tracing the elvish runes with your fingertips. "Speak, friend, and enter," they read, a phrase meant to welcome. But friendship, you know, is a language that the world is forgetting. When the stone doors finally open and the black breath of Khazad-dûm spills out, even your staff's light feels small. You whisper a prayer to Eru Ilúvatar, not for protection, but for courage, and step into the dark. The echoes swallow you whole. Inside, the air smells of dust and grief. Every footstep stirs ghosts. You can almost hear the rhythm of hammers, the laughter of miners, the deep voices singing to the stone. Now there is only silence, and something else, something vast and patient. You lead on, your staff glowing faintly, your voice low as you guide the company through broken bridges and endless stairs. Even in shadow, you can't help but mutter a joke or two. "I once told a dwarf I could outdrink him," you say quietly. "That's why I've been hiding ever since." The hobbits giggle despite their fear, and for a brief moment, the darkness loses its teeth. But then, deep beneath the world, it wakes. A sound like thunder in a heartbeat, distant yet closing fast. The drums begin. Doom, doom, rolling through the halls of Moria like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Orcs swarm in the dark, arrows glinting like the eyes of spiders. You fight as only a Maiar can. Fire from your staff, command in your voice, your spirit blazing brighter than the forge of Aule. Yet you know this is not the true enemy. The air trembles, the stone quakes, and from the abyss below comes a roar older than speech. The Balrog, flame of Udun, the shadow of Morgoth's ancient war. You feel its heat long before you see it, and when you finally do, your breath catches. Its wings unfurl like night made flesh. Its sword burns with hatred remembered from the dawn of the world. You've met its kind before, long ago, when the Valar still walked openly among the stars. "This foe is beyond any of you," you whisper. And the words taste like prophecy. The chase through the mines is madness. Bridges crumble, arrows fly, and in the chaos you find yourself laughing, wildly, almost joyously. "Well," you mutter between gasps, "at least it's never boring." But when you reach the bridge of Khazad-dûm, laughter dies in your throat. There is no retreat left, no trick, no clever spell. Only the fire and the abyss. You turn to your companions, the hobbits, trembling, Aragorn, sword drawn, Legolas, eyes shining with tears unspilled. "Fly, you fools," you tell them, not in anger but in love. You strike your staff upon the stone. "You cannot pass." The Balrog steps forward, a god of ruin, and for a heartbeat, all light vanishes. Fire meets light. Shadow meets will, and the bridge cracks. The creature's whip coils around your legs, dragging you toward the pit. Pain blossoms like lightning, and as the world falls away, you cling to the edge, forcing one last smile. "Go on," you whisper. "The story's not done yet." Then the stone gives way, and you fall. The descent is endless. You fall through smoke and stone, through centuries and memories. You strike the creature again and again as you fall, your flame against its. The world narrows to pain and light. Deep in the bowels of the earth, beyond even Sauron's reach, you crash upon a mountain of stone and rise again. The battle rages across nameless caverns, fire against fire, until at last you climb the endless stair, out of darkness, into the frozen air atop Xeroxigal. There, under a sky of silver stars, you smite the Balrog upon the mountainside. Fire dies, smoke fades. You stagger, wounded, empty. The stars above you blur. "I am spent," you whisper, and the world fades to white. Later, Elvish scholars would debate what truly happened. Some say Gandalf died that day, that the Valar themselves sent him back. Others claim you were never truly gone, only transformed, like lightning striking the same mountain twice. You'll never tell them which. Death, you discover, is quieter than legend allows. You awaken not in darkness but in light, your memory burned away and rewritten in flame. You are no longer merely Gandalf the Grey. You are something both less and more, Gandalf the White, a reborn vessel of purpose. Yet even as your power grows, your heart remains the same. You still crave laughter, friendship, the smell of rain on grass. You still miss your pipe, and you still believe that even in the shadow of fire, there must be gentleness. In your first breath after rebirth, you laugh, a quiet, cracked sound that startles even the eagles. "Well," you murmur to no one, "that could have gone worse."
You awaken upon the soft green slopes of Lothlorien, the wind brushing through Malern leaves like the sigh of a dream you barely survived. For a long moment, you remember nothing, only the echo of falling, the brightness of fire, the sound of your own voice crying out into the void. The elves find you there, pale and still, your robes once gray now shimmering faintly with the hue of starlight. When you finally open your eyes, Galadriel stands before you, her gaze both sorrowful and knowing. "Mithrandir," she whispers, "not all who fall are lost." Her words drift through you like a blessing. You have returned, but something within you has changed. The weariness of centuries feels washed away, your thoughts clearer, your will sharpened to a single point. You are no longer the wanderer cloaked in smoke and humility. You are the fire itself, bound now to purpose. Yet in the quiet corners of your new self, a question lingers. Have you been reborn or remade? When you first hear your new name, it startles you. Gandalf the White. The words taste foreign, too pure for the grit you once wore with pride. You think of Saruman, once the White, now twisted by envy and the illusion of control, and wonder if names are merely masks for destiny. You travel first to Fangorn Forest, drawn by the whisper of ancient trees. There, beneath the shadowed boughs, you meet Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli again. They approach cautiously, weapons half drawn, their eyes wide with disbelief. "You fell," Aragorn stammers. "You burned." You smile, faintly amused. "Yes," you say, "and I got better." The relief that floods their faces nearly breaks you. Even now, humor remains your best disguise against the terror of what you've become. Fangorn itself seems to recognize your renewal. The forest stirs around you, old Ents murmuring, branches creaking like the shifting bones of time. You can feel their slow thoughts brushing against yours, a conversation older than language. Treebeard greets you with a deep, rumbling sigh. "You have the smell of both life and death," he says thoughtfully, "and too much haste in your heart." You laugh softly. "Haste is my business," you reply. "Or hadn't you noticed how the world burns faster each year?" He chuckles, a sound like an avalanche in slow motion, and warns you that Saruman's treachery has reached even the roots of Fangorn. You listen in silence, realizing that your former brother's fall is no longer a tragedy. It is a contagion. His machines devour the trees. His words poison the minds of men. His hunger for order unravels the balance of the world. When you finally confront him at Orthanc, the tower gleams like a needle of obsidian thrust into the sky. You ascend its steps slowly, staff in hand, the white of your robe dazzling against the black stone. Saruman greets you with a voice like honey over steel. "So the Grey Fool returns as the White," he sneers. "You think yourself my equal?" You shake your head. "No," you answer quietly. "You're better." For a heartbeat, the tower itself seems to flinch. You cast your staff upon the stone, and light shatters the shadow. The voice of the Valar moves through you, not as command, but as music, and Saruman's staff breaks with a sound like thunder cracking the heavens. Power falls away from him like dust. His eyes widen with disbelief, and for a fleeting moment, you pity him. You see in him what you could have become: knowledge without compassion, order without warmth. Your voice once could move mountains, you tell him, but you forgot to listen. He screams something bitter and small, and you leave him to his ruin. When you ride from Isengard, the wind itself seems to part for you. Shadowfax, Lord of Horses, carries you with a speed that feels more like flight than gallop. The plains of Rohan blur beneath you. Golden grass, red dawn, the scent of cold iron and rain. You are a comet crossing a weary sky, and for the first time, you sense the tide turning. At Edoras, Theoden sits hunched beneath the weight of Saruman's whispering. You lay your hand upon his brow, speak a word older than memory, and watch as the darkness lifts from his eyes. "Breathe, son of Eorl," you murmur, and he does, gasping as though the world has just been reborn. The hall fills with weeping and laughter, and somewhere in that sound, you feel alive again.
The scholars of Gondor later debated whether your transformation was divine intervention or the final unveiling of your true nature. Some said you had become an emissary of Eru himself, others that you merely burned away what mortality had dimmed. You never bothered to clarify. Truth, after all, is not for wizards to define. It's for those who live and die by it. What matters to you is that the fire still burns, not in your hand, but in the hearts of those who follow. When you speak to Aragorn, his eyes steady on yours, you sense the shape of what's to come. The time of the elves is ending, you tell him. The time of men has begun. Be wise in its dawn.
And yet, even now, the world reminds you that victory is never simple. War brews, hope flickers, and somewhere in the east, the eye still watches. But for this moment, on this wind, you let yourself smile. The sky is vast and cold, the smell of grass sweet, and for once, your heart is lighter than your robe. You whisper to the wind, Gandalf the White. Sounds rather pretentious, doesn't it? Shadowfax snorts as if in agreement, and you laugh. A soft, mortal sound carried far into the plains. The sky above Minas Tirith burns with the color of iron and grief, and the wind tastes of ash. You stand upon the walls, your staff gleaming faintly in the half-light. The weight of the world balanced upon your shoulders once more. Below you, the city breathes. Thousands of souls preparing for dawn that may never come. The War of the Ring is no longer prophecy. It is thunder made flesh. You've crossed plains and mountains to reach this point, and every scar on your hand feels like a word written by time itself. The air hums with anticipation, the way it does before lightning strikes. You are not the same Gandalf who once laughed beneath the party tree. You are the storm's voice now, the calm in its center, the fire that refuses to be extinguished. And yet, even in this moment of looming catastrophe, you can't resist muttering, "If I survive this, I'm taking a very long nap." When the beacons of Gondor blaze to life, stretching like a burning chain through the mountains, you smile despite the dread tightening your chest. Hope, you realize, is a contagion. One spark lights another, and soon the whole world catches fire with courage. You ride out with Pippin, your small companion clinging behind you, his fear so pure it feels almost holy. "Will we die?" he whispers once. You don't lie. "One day," you say gently, "but not today." He laughs shakily, and for a fleeting moment, the darkness ahead doesn't seem quite so endless. That's always been your way. Truth wrapped in kindness, courage disguised as humor. It's how you teach mortals to walk toward the impossible. The siege begins with silence, the kind of silence that feels alive. Then comes the roar of siege engines, the crash of stones, the sky ablaze with the cruel artistry of war. You move through it like a flicker of light, shouting orders, lifting men from despair, extinguishing flames with a sweep of your staff. For hours, it feels as though you are holding back the sea with your bare hands. Yet, in the heart of chaos, you still find humanity. You pause to comfort a boy no older than Pippin, his sword trembling in his grip. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," you tell him softly. "It's choosing what's right, even when fear is louder." He nods and runs back into the fray, and you whisper after him, "Good lad." You sense Sauron's malice pressing upon your mind, a heatless fire probing, searching. It tries to bend you with visions of failure, of Frodo fallen, of the ring reclaimed. But you push back, drawing strength from the same fragile species you once pitied. Men may falter, but they also rise again. You've seen them do it countless times, and in that realization lies your power, not in divine might, but in faith. Some say Gandalf foresaw this, the chroniclers will write, that every choice was part of his grand design. Others argue you simply trusted the hearts of fools. Perhaps both are true. You've learned that wisdom and luck are brothers who rarely dine apart. In the Pelennor fields, the earth itself trembles. You watch Éomer rally his riders, their horns slicing through the clouds like dawn breaking over despair. The Rohirrim charge, golden and terrible, and for a heartbeat, the world remembers what hope looks like. You see it in Aragorn too, the young king finally stepping into the shape of destiny. His blade gleams like memory reborn, and you feel a strange warmth in your chest. Pride, perhaps, or love, though you'd never admit it aloud. He'll do, you murmur, and even Shadowfax seems to nod in agreement. When the Witch King comes, riding upon his fell beast, you step forward without hesitation. The creature shrieks, the air curdles, and your staff flares white. For a moment, you stand alone between life and annihilation. "Old fool!" the ringwraith hisses. "You cannot save them!" You smile faintly. "Maybe not," you answer, "but I can make it very inconvenient for you." And with that, you strike, not as a god, but as a being who has lived among mortals long enough to understand that defiance itself is sacred. The two of you clash like storm and night, light and void, until the sudden sound of horns, Rohan's call, shatters the balance. The Witch King turns his gaze elsewhere, and you breathe again. The war surges on, but you have bought time. And in this war, time is victory. Later, in the brief quiet between battles, you find Pippin asleep in a chair, his small hand still clutching his sword. You drape your cloak over him and sit beside the window, watching the dawn. The first light of day touches the white city, and for a moment, you could almost believe in peace. "You're doing well, old man," you whisper to yourself, though you're not sure if it's praise or a plea. The truth is, even wizards feel the weariness of the world. You've seen ages rise and fall, kingdoms crumble, stars fade. And yet, every time the dark gathers, someone, some farmer's son, some frightened hobbit, stands up to face it. That's what keeps you walking. That's why you still fight. When victory finally comes, it's not triumph you feel, it's relief. You stand amid the ruins of battle, your robes tattered, your heart heavy with the cost. The fields are quiet except for the crows. Aragorn kneels among the wounded, his hands steady, his face illuminated by a dawn that finally feels real. You smile, but it's a tired smile. You know what comes next. Farewells, rebuilding, the slow fade of wonder. Still, as you look toward the east, where the last clouds of Mordor unravel like torn parchment, you allow yourself one last wry thought. If anyone asks, I told you so. The wind shifts, carrying with it the faintest scent of the sea. You close your eyes. The War of the Ring may be ending, but your journey, you suspect, is not. The war ends not with cheers, but with the quiet hum of rebuilding, of stones being lifted, of hope learning to walk again on unsteady legs. Minas Tirith shines white once more, its banners fluttering in the new age of men, and the ring, your oldest burden, is finally gone. You feel it like a pressure lifted from the world's chest, a great exhale after centuries of holding breath. Frodo and Sam have returned home, though you can see in their eyes that home will never again fit them perfectly. They have walked through shadow, and even the green hills of the Shire cannot erase that weight. You stand at the gates of the White City, staff in hand, cloak stirring in the dawn wind, and you know that your work here is nearly done. Immortality was never meant for endless labor. You are tired in ways words cannot name. The age that rises now is not yours. It belongs to men, to their fragile courage and fierce forgetfulness. It is time, you realize, for the fire to dim. In the court of the king, Aragorn greets you not as a servant, but as an equal. Stay, he says, his voice still carrying that mix of command and plea. Middle-earth needs you yet. You smile gently. No, my friend. Middle-earth needs to forget me. He looks away, understanding the truth before his heart allows it. The wise always leave before they become relics. Later that evening, you walk the gardens of the city, the scent of athelas and fresh water wrapping around you like a farewell. Pippin finds you there, his armor polished, his grin stubbornly bright. You'll visit, won't you? He asks. You crouch, meeting his gaze. I'll visit in stories, you tell him. And that's better. Stories live longer than wizards. He laughs, though his eyes glisten. When you finally reach the havens, the sea spreads before you like molten glass, the horizon burning gold. The air is thick with salt and memory. Certain waits by the ship, older than sorrow, his silver beard glimmering in the light. It is time, he says simply. You nod, though your throat tightens. Around you stand those who will sail with you, Elrond, wise and weary, Galadriel, radiant as dawn after rain, and Frodo, his hand still faintly scarred by the ring that nearly consumed him. You see the tremor in his fingers, the ache behind his smile, and you know why he has come. Middle-earth heals slowly, and some wounds belong to the sea now. The ship creaks as you step aboard, its wood whispering songs older than the sun. The sails unfurl, catching the westward wind, and the water gleams with impossible light. The hobbits watch from the dock, small against the fading land. Sam's cry carries faintly across the waves your name, breaking and brave. You raise your staff one last time in salute. The wind catches your hair, the sea sprays your face, and for the first time since you fell into the abyss of Khazad-dûm, you feel utterly weightless. Well, you murmur to no one in particular, there and back again, as someone once said. Behind you, Middle-earth grows small, its mountains dissolving into haze, its laughter echoing faintly across the gulf. Ahead, the light of the undying lands glows, not blinding, but soft, like morning after endless night. Some say that those who sail never return, that the world forgets them entirely. Others whisper that they linger in dreams, that if you listen closely to the crackle of a campfire or the sigh of the tide, you might still hear your laughter. You think both might be true. After all, wizards were never made for certainty. As the ship drifts westward, Frodo leans beside you, his eyes searching the horizon. Will it hurt? He asks quietly. You smile. Only at first. Then it will feel like waking up. He nods, closes his eyes, and breathes. You turn toward the setting sun, the light warming your face. The sea sings beneath you, vast and eternal, carrying you home to a place beyond endings, beyond memory. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the world, a small fire crackles in a hobbit's hearth, and a story begins again. The light of Valinor greets you not as a blaze, but as a breath, a slow unfurling warmth that fills every hollow you never knew you had. The air hums with harmony, faint and endless, as if the music of the Aenir still drifts just beneath the surface of sound. You walk ashore beside Frodo and the others, your feet sinking softly into white sand that glows faintly underfoot. The horizon curves in gold and silver, a world without shadow. The pain you carried through every century begins to ease, dissolving like snow in sunlight. You look back once over the sea, toward the world you've left behind. The memory of Middle-earth flickers across your mind, the laughter of hobbits, the thunder of Rohin's charge, the whisper of elven songs fading into twilight. You whisper a blessing to the wind. May it never forget the small hands that shaped its fate. Valinor is both familiar and strange. The hills shimmer with the memory of starlight, and every tree seems to breathe with its own ancient rhythm. The air tastes faintly of honey and rain. You walk through the gardens of Lorien, hearing voices that once taught you mercy, and in their presence, you feel once more like Olorin, the quiet dreamer who whispered comfort into mortal hearts. Nienna greets you first, her eyes filled with tears that are not sorrow but remembrance. You have learned much of pity, she says. Now learn to rest. Her voice is soft, and when she touches your hand, a century of weariness slides away. You laugh quietly, realizing you have not laughed without burden since the first age. Rest, you repeat, as if testing the word's meaning. I suppose I can try. Elves walk here, too, radiant and unaging, their songs carrying no grief now, only wonder. Some recognize you, bowing their heads slightly as you pass. Mithrandir, they murmur, you were no longer the gray nor the white, only the memory of both. You find yourself drawn to the sea's edge each evening, watching the foam gather around your boots. The sunsets in Valinor last longer, stretching into colors your mortal eyes could never name. You think often of your companions, Aragorn crowned beneath the white tree, Legolas sailing west at last, Sam tending his garden and his heart full of ghosts. You wonder if they ever still speak your name by the firelight. Perhaps they do, perhaps they've moved on as all must. Scholars will argue, of course. Some say Gandalf's story ends here in peace beyond pain. Others insist you still walk the shores of Oman, your spirit lingering in quiet service, lighting dreams for those who will never see these lands. The truth is simpler, you do not end. Not really. You dissolve into the rhythm of the world that made you. The stars hum your name in secret, and the wind that brushes the mountains of Middle-earth still carries your laughter. For you were never just a wizard, nor a warrior, nor even a guide. You were the thin silver thread tying despair to hope, fire to ash, endings to beginnings. As twilight deepens over Valinor, you sit upon a stone and listen to the sea. Its rhythm matches your heartbeat, slow and calm. Frodo sits beside you sometimes, though he speaks less now. His pain has faded, his eyes clear again. One night he turns to you and says, "You never really left, did you?" You smile. "No one ever truly leaves a story," you reply. "They only turn the page." He laughs softly, the kind of laugh that sounds like forgiveness. And for the first time in longer than you can measure, you allow yourself to believe that everything has found its place. The world dims around you, not in loss, but in gentleness. You close your eyes, and the whispering of the waves becomes a lullaby. You think of lanterns in Hobbiton, of fireworks blooming like stars, of the smell of old books and pipe smoke curling in the night. You think of friendship and of foolish courage. You think of all the light you carried, and all the hands that kept it alive after you set it down. The sea sighs once more, long and low, and somewhere within that sound, your story settles, complete, enduring, and finally at peace. Sleep now, Gandalf the Grey, bearer of fire, keeper of hope. The world turns, the stars sing, and the song goes ever on.